In this session, what we'll do is we'll try to understand how we can build up a single sign-on using forms authentication. Now, many times what happens is that you have different websites. For example, like if you look at you have www.msn.com, which is Microsoft's own website, and then basically you have let's say like www.msdn.com. Okay, let's say. Now, what you would like is basically that when a user logs into the msn.com site, you would also like to log in into the msdn.com site. Okay. So in other words, you want to implement single sign-on. So when the user goes and basically he logs into msdn.com, and if he for some reason goes and browses to the pages of msdn.com, he should be able to browse the pages without showing any kind of login, authentication and authorization screen. So how do we achieve that using forms authentication? In order to understand single sign-on, what we'll do is basically, here's a simple sample application we have created. So basically what we have done here is that we have created a simple login.aspx page, and this login.aspx page has it takes in a simple username and password, and if the user is valid, it redirects to home.aspx page, and from home.aspx page the user can navigate to admin or user.aspx page. Now the validation of the system actually uses forms authentication internally. So basically you can see that over here I have declared the authentication mode as forms, and I've said that the startup page is login.aspx page, and once the login is successful, he should redirect to home.aspx page. Now what I've also done is basically I have entered I have also put in some usernames and passwords here so that I can do the validation. So in the credential tag I have said that there are two users. One is Shiv with password pass@123, and the other user is Raju with a password as pass@123. Now basically in the behind code of the login.aspx, so when you go to the behind code of login.aspx, I have used the forms authentication class. So basically I have imported the system.web.security, and I have used the forms or authenticating class to authenticate as well as to redirect. So you can see that I have said here forms authentication.authenticate with whatever username and password which is entered into the onto the UI, and once the username is valid, what I'm doing is basically I am just calling the redirect from login page, which basically helps me to create the cookie at the browser site. So the forms.authenticate basically authenticates that if the user is from the web config file, that is either Shiv or Raju, and then finally the forms.redirect from login page creates a cookie. So how does the single sign-on gets implemented by using forms authentication? Now remember that one of the basic concepts in forms authentication is that it uses either the cookies or the URL to remember if the user was valid or not. So basically forms authentication is more like a cookie based kind of authentication. So what happens is basically when, let's say that here we have two websites, one is web 1 and web 2, and we want that basically when the user basically logs into web 1, he should also be able to browse the pages of web 2. Now what happens the first time is when the user logs into the site web 1 using forms authentication, a cookie file is created at the user computer site. So basically in the user in the temporary directory, in the temporary Internet Explorer files or internet files, a cookie.txt file is created. Now when the user tries to browse to web 2, what happens is this cookie.txt file where credentials are taken to web 2 to tell that basically that he is a valid user and he should be allowed to log in. Now one of the very important things in single sign-on is basically that the machine key for both of these sites should be same. So in other words, in the web config file we need to ensure that the machine config key is same for both of the sites. So what we need to do is that the web config file, in the web config file we need to make an entry of the machine key, and we need to say that the validation key, we need to specify the validation key and the decryption key. So in other words, this machine key should be same for web1.config file as well as a web2.config file, and that's a requirement. So basically how does the single sign-on happen? Once he logs into the web1 site, the cookie.txt file basically helps us to identify that has this user logged in to the single sign-on mechanism, or to the single sign-on to your single sign-on framework. Now what we'll do is we'll take the same application which we have talked first, and we will create two sites out of this, and what we'll do is we will log in into one site, and we'll see that, and we'll try to browse the pages of the other site. let's see how it works. So here's what I've done. I have basically created two directories over here. One is the eWebsite 2 and the other one is the eWebsite 1. Now what I'll do is I'll go to my Visual Studio and I will publish the website on website in the eWebsite 2, as well as I'll publish the website in eWebsite 1 also. So basically the same code I published. So if I go to my eWebsite 1, I should see some kind of pages there. Yes, I can. And my eWebsite 2 also has some pages. Now one of the important thing, as I've said, is that basically the config file of both of these websites, the web.config file of both of these websites have the same machine key. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to my Internet Explorer and I've created two websites here, and both of these websites are completely different and they are into their own app domain and they are into their own app pool. And what I've done is basically I have configured the directories of both of these websites to point towards their appropriate directory. So for example, the website 2 virtual directory, I have ensured that it points to eWebsite 2, while the website 1 virtual directory points towards the eWebsite 1 directory. Right, so now we have two sites here, completely two different isolated sites, and what we are going to do is when I log in into this site, I should also be able to log in into this site. So now let's go and run this application and see that how how this thing will actually work. Now one of the things what I've done for both of these websites is basically one website is running on the 80 port or normal 80 port. You can see the website 1 basically runs on the 80 port, while the website 2 runs on the 411 port. Okay, so just to differentiate that both of the websites are running on different ports, they are different virtual directories altogether. Now, so here's my 80 port website which is running login.aspx, you can see, and here's my 411 port website which is running login.aspx. Now what we're going to do is we're going to, if I log in into this website, I should be able to browse the pages of this website. So just to confirm, if I go directly to user.aspx by any chance, he doesn't allow me to log in. So basically I cannot log in, I cannot browse this page directly. Okay, now what I'll do is I'll go to my 80 port website and I will put a proper username and password here. So let's say I'll put it shiv and pass at the rate 123, whatever was specified on the web config file, and let me just log in. Now I'm logged into this website. Now the time I'm logged into this website, if you remember that one of the things what the forms authentication does is it creates a cookie. So you can see that a cookie text file is already created. Now this cookie text file will help me to identify, or will help the web server to identify that have I been logged into the single sign-on mechanism or not. Now what we'll do is basically I will go to this website now and I will directly try to browse the user.aspx. So let me go here and go to user.aspx. So you can see that I can now browse to the user.aspx directly. I can browse to the home.aspx directly, which was not happening just a moment before. So when I log into the localhost 80 port website, which is pointing towards a different website, to a different directory altogether, I am also able to log into the other website which is now running on 411 port. So in this way we can implement single sign-on using forms authentication. So one of the important points again to revise is that basically you need to ensure that the machine key is same for both of the websites. Now one of the questions which you would ask yourself is basically that what if it's a PHP website, what if it's a a website which is an old ASP? How does single sign-on work at that time? For those kind of scenarios, definitely your forms authentication as such is not available in PHP or other things. But what you can do is basically you can use some kind of web service which can interact as a common mechanism to ensure that if the user has logged in or not. So I hope that this session was useful, and keep watching my videos, and you can always catch me up at www.questpond.com. Thanks a lot.